Insum Insider.
Welcome to the Inside. This is the Insum Insider, your source for Oracle Apex tips, techniques, methodology, and really wherever that discussion takes us. I'm your host, Monty Lachley, coming to you from an undisclosed location just outside Houston, Texas. Back in the fold, tanned, rested, and ready is my good friend and member of the Insum family, Michelle Scamini. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Monty.
At the helm, keeping us on time and task, is our producer, French Canadian, Mark Rule.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
It's Thursday, May 28th, episode 6, and thank you for spending a piece of your afternoon with us. We're coming to you today through the miracle of Zoom teleconferencing. Michelle, we're 6 weeks into this. We've covered productivity tools, deployments, both in English and in Spanish, code review, third-party design libraries, forms to Apex tooling, and today we discuss extending Oracle E-Business Suite with Apex. And let me remind everyone, the main reason we're doing this is that we miss you guys. We miss the interaction that we've come to enjoy at the various conferences. And if you've made it this far, you've registered through the Insum Insider site, and that's where you can reference previous week's topics. There's also the forum where we end up each week and where we will end up today. Michelle, welcome back. You just couldn't stay away, could you?
I couldn't, and I actually have something to admit. I was away last week. I wasn't next to you on screen, but I was watching.
Well, good. Well, I thought
you guys did a great job.
Yeah, Francis had some big shoes to fill, but I thought he did well. But we missed you. Make no mistake about it. We missed you. We're glad you're back. And I'm really looking forward to this episode because at Insum, a big part of our business is extending EBS. EBS is great, but it's sometimes it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. So there are cases where you want to tweak EBS with an Apex extension. Do you have much experience yourself with EBS and extending with Apex? I
actually do not. This is something that I'm learning about, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to today. I've had a chance to work with Sylvain on some of his content, and I saw his French episode, and I thought that was very impressive what he's been doing and what we've been doing with EBS.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a big part of what we do these days. So what do you say we bring them on right now? Sylvain Martel and Anton Nielsen. Sylvain, Anton, welcome to the Insum Insider.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. I think we may have a little bit of an echo there, but we'll work through it. Sylvain, I tell people all the time that you wrote the book on EBS Extensions with Apex. You did co-write Oracle's white paper on the topic. And Anton, I honestly didn't realize exactly how much experience you had with EBS. I mean, it goes way back. I kind of identify you as developing the single sign-on piece that allows you to seamlessly go EBS to Apex. I mean, that is integral to our success. But you guys have tons of experience. Would you guys kind of go into your background with EBS and why you guys are perfectly positioned to kind of headline our efforts at Insum?
You go ahead, Anton.
Sure. Okay. So from an EBS longevity standpoint, early on when I was at Oracle, I was involved in a project that was actually building out the grants module. And so I was involved in the actual development of that module for grants. And then I was part of consulting for a long time, and we did find that extending or tweaking the e-business suite was a constant request from essentially every e-business suite customer that Oracle installed into. And really, we started out using every one of the multitude of frameworks that the EBS applications were built with, between forms and UIX and it was the flavor of the month, you know, when it came to developing EBS. Fortunately, all of those things operated on the same set of APIs and underlying views, which actually made it really possible to implement Apex easily. The challenge always was the single sign-on aspect of it. So pretty quick, we realized that we could use, well, we started out using Oracle Designer to extend EBS, using the PL SQL web cartridge from Designer. But pretty quickly that led right into, well, WebDB and then ultimately HTMLDB, Apex, whatever name you wanted. And the amazing thing there was Apex has had 5 different names, but it's the same tool and it's the same great foundation, and you can upgrade it all the way along. But EBS has the same name, but it's 10 different technologies that have gone along. So you could have stuck with Apex and had 5 different names, but 1 technology, or you could be with EBS and have the same name, but 10 different technologies that you had to learn. So that was really sort of, it was the idea that we had customers that had just spent a lot of money on EBS, but they needed to quickly extend it. And that's how I got involved through consulting and ultimately building out the connector. And I'll say one other thing about the single sign-on connector is that Oracle for a long time, you know, has had single sign-on between EBS and other things, but that single sign-on product is pretty expensive and didn't give some of the features that Sylvain will probably talk about that we were looking for. So we were looking for something that didn't have the high cost of single sign-on at the time and provided all these additional features. And we were, you know, it was pre-OAuth and those kinds of things. So that's my long-winded intro. Sorry.
I like that because it's a real nice picture of what, you know, historically EBS was. I mean, you're totally right. It's just a mixture of different technologies from almost different era. You know, and I totally agree with that. And I saw it firsthand because I started to be involved with ERPs at the beginning of the, well, it really was the Y2K bug for those who are old enough to remember that. So I had experience with MRP system, if people remember, the MRP existed before. And then all of a sudden the Y2K bug came along and our company had to go and do a big revamp of existing systems or to go with an ERP, and they chose SAP. So I was involved with that, and you know, so you're welcome to the world of ERP. It's a pretty harsh welcoming when you have to work on the SAP. And then with a couple of years go by, that company basically, not that it ran out of money, but just didn't have any money left after the implementation of this ERP after the Y2K bug. And I end up working at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And they say, well, you know SAP well, we'll send you to EBS implementation. So I think they didn't read my resume well. So SAP, EBS, they're 3 letters, right? But it's just, we're not the same 3 letters. But anywho, so I jumped into EBS and learning on the spot pretty much. But when you know the concept of an ERP, right? It's just the syntax that changes. And like you said, Anton, every customer you go to, you have this beautiful system. And when I say beautiful, it's just because it's so extended and whatnot. But every organization has gaps that they have to fill because the ERP doesn't fill anything. And, you know, we were doing development in forms, and then these organizations were asking us to develop in the web pages. And then you had to learn this OAF thing, the Oracle Application Framework. And I'm telling you, you know, after a couple of bottles of Tylenol, it just wouldn't go in. Like it just, I wasn't made for Java. And then I saw, and I was back in 2007, I think. I saw this Apex. Yeah, so oh, this is quite interesting. So, you know, I really don't know how I got involved with Apex, and then I saw that. I think it was just for fun, And then at the project that I was working at that time, I think it was the city of Montreal at that time, I said, well, hey, we should use this instead of doing, either customization of forms or form personalization and whatnot. And, back then, unfortunately, DBA is saying, we don't trust Apex. It's not good. It's for small things and whatnot, right? And you remember these conversations? So a couple of years went by, and I was always trying to put Apex in these projects. And sometimes you were able to do a little application on the side. And so at one point, that is like fast forward to 2014, Patrick Bonneville from Insum, one of the co-founder, he had gone to collaborate this conference for Oracle application users, right, from OA, now called OATUG and Quest. And so he came back from there saying, you know what, I've seen some pretty interesting people that are using Apex, and they want to use it in the context of EBS. And also David Peak, who's the product manager, I think he was the product manager of Apex back then. He said, guys, you're Apex specialists. I think it would be a good fit with EBS. EBS is using forms and reports, and it's, I think it should be a good fit. So we came back, and they know me from my work on EBS projects, and I was attempting Apex or was experimenting with Apex, and then they called me and they said, you know what, would be interested to see what we can do with these two technologies together, if you can call it that way. And then we started back in like 6 years ago, I believe. And we basically put the proof of concept together, make sure that Apex was a good fit for EBS. And of course it is, because there are so many of these use cases that you can use, because you need to extend it and develop on the side, an Excel spreadsheet and Microsoft Access, and that's how we started. We thought it was a great idea, and a lot of organizations thought the same thing too.
Well, I promise I won't make everyone sit through the name game, but I was at Coopers and Lybrand briefly, and you're at PwC. I hadn't made that connection before.
Oh yeah, of course. So we're almost like alumni, you and I.
That's it.
Well, here's the interesting thing. What's that?
I think Coopers and Lybrand predates even PwC's merger, but yeah, so it shows that I'm a little older. But
barely, it doesn't show. It doesn't really show. So here's the interesting thing, though. So we started this initiative, to have EBS and Apex, or Apex Extensions, or develop EBS Extensions with Apex. There we go. That's how we have to say it. And so, of course, one of the things is that's more important for everybody is that, Apex doesn't know EBS, EBS doesn't know Apex. You need to make them talk, and for a good reason. Organization and people want this to go from EBS as you signed in and redirect or jump to Apex without having to, authenticate again and whatnot. So you need some sort of a single sign-on. And your comment about single sign-on is so accurate. A couple of years ago, I was attending a session of this person that for a year tried to implement OAM, or Oracle Access Manager, on EBS. A year. That's insane. Like, and I don't know how much money.
Hey, gentlemen, we have a comment that came in and really concerns like implementing solutions with Apex 2BS. And the comment is, or the question is, do you have to be an expert in EBS structures in order to offer some kind of solution with Apex? Because I understand that these structures are very wide.
Well, if the meaning of structure means the data model and how ABS works, definitely it helps. If you don't know what an operating unit is and the structure of a business group and multiple operating unit, maintained by a security profile and so on and so forth, it could be a bit harder. You need someone to help you out in that matter. I don't know. What do you think, Anton?
You need a subject matter expert to help you with the understanding of the structures and what they are and what they mean. But you don't have to be an EBS expert to start trying, right? If you know what a table is and what a view is, you're going to be able to dig in and understand some basics. But the thing is, if you don't have somebody that really knows what they're talking about, you might write a report of the top 3 sales reps and figure out that you've actually got, the top 3, window washers, right? It's just, so it definitely helps to have somebody that knows what they're looking for. But the main thing is that you need to use the published views and APIs, right? You just can't go in just writing anything you want against the tables, because that's when you're going to get into trouble.
That cannot be more true, because more often than none, it's not a question of just inserting a record into a table. That action often goes into a workflow and goes to some other table somewhere else. So if you don't use these APIs, you're probably on a good path for a data fix later on with Oracle support.
But if you're looking to report information out, you're not going to break anything. You might not report the information you think you're reporting, but you're not going to break anything. You can pull data out of it. So.
And a participant has come in with a comment saying that if you are playing an all-in-one role to extend EBS with Apex, you need to know functional, e.g. SOB, OU, etc., and EBS technical plus no Apex.
It does help. It does help.
But I have found that subject matter experts within an organization, business people, functional people, have an incredible wealth of knowledge. And if you're a good Apex developer, and you have the ability to connect into that EBS environment, and you are willing to sit next to a business user and recognize that they're the expert, not you, you can get a long way with that.
Yeah, you have to schmooze them a little bit.
And we got
any other questions?
Yeah, I think this one will probably be for near the end of the session. Is can you use Apex to extend the SaaS Fusion ERP apps? Yeah,
that becomes a popular topic.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that as we move along.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did want to kind of point out one thing though. We talked about our own sort of personal longevity with EBS and with Apex. Both of us go way back in both topics. But you also mentioned, David Peak years and years ago was the product manager at Oracle for Apex, and he still is. And I think it's that longevity of Apex that, and not just the tool, but the people behind Apex that really strikes me as being a huge advantage of using this technology, particularly with the eBusiness Suite, where the eBusiness Suite, really has just a revolving door of people working on it, technologies that have been used on it, all of these kinds of things. And for me personally, integrating Apex with the eBusiness Suite has given me sort of this foundation and this longevity that makes my eBusiness Suite skills last, and the applications that we've developed last so much longer than I feel they would have if I had jumped on every alternate technology that could have been used to extend the eBusiness Suite. I don't know what your take on that is, but
that is so true. And one, I don't know if we can call them technologies, but one example that I always have in mind is for the longest time, the EBS group tried to incorporate some sort of I will say BI, you know, loosely used BI, and they had daily business intelligence module, I think it was called, right? And then they scrapped that and they brought in Endeca for EBS, if I remember the name properly. And then that lasted for a few years, and then they scrapped that. And now they have this new command center, which I think is like third time's a charm, is the right way to go. Because I have to admit, Cliff Godwin, he's VP of application development, if my recollection is right. He's doing a super job of EBS, on EBS, and bring EBS to the 21st century sort of thing. Because, you know, these older technologies, and maybe they were not working and too hard. And sometimes they were just too expensive. Like Endeca, I think, was like a in-memory type of BI, but you need like 3 servers just to run it, right?
Right, and that was true about a lot of, well, the reporting on EBS, but also just extending EBS. The middle tier components were so heavy and expensive to run.
Yeah, exactly. And all that to say that, you know, when, just to come back to our own experience, when we start to be serious about what we wanted to do, and we were talking about the single sign-on at the beginning, and we evaluated how we can just bundle OAM, sorry, and then that was like just too much. And there was this gentleman who I never met, and I'd love to meet him, Rod West. He wrote this beautiful white paper and a very simple solution to integrate or to reuse a session from EBS to be reused in Apex. And we actually created like let's call it a community package, like a community of free integration that we distributed for many years. But we're not so satisfied with this. The part that we like is it was easy to do, right? And we could achieve it. The part that we didn't like, it wasn't too flexible. So, you know, different domain, the cookie wouldn't work. If you try to go hybrid cloud, obviously that wouldn't work. And at that time, and still now, Francis Mignot and I were talking about that. And Francis, he knew you, Anton, for a long time, I believe, from, you know, sure, historically Apex. And he says, I think Anton as a way to integrate, you had done some EBS before, let's talk to them. And you know what? I read a lot of your blog and the book that you collaborate to, and I was actually scared to talk to you. Like he says, give a call to Anton. I said, no, I'm not going to talk to Anton. Like, he's God, man. Like, no. So Francis did the approach, and then you had something, and you were willing to share it with us. So I don't know if you remember that.
Sent over a package, right? Here you go. See if you can figure it out. And maybe make it better. I don't know.
And here you go. You know, here's a little surprise for you, my friend. Uh-oh. So let me share my screen for a second. So hang on a second. Here we go. So this is what you gave us back then. So this is like, here's that app, and this is gonna make EBS do Apex work. Have fun. Oh, okay.
Right, that's what I think it was. Yeah, have fun.
And we go, okay, well, all right. So we had a URL here, and
look at those question marks. There are question marks. There's help.
And you know what? That was like with Apex 4.2. Yeah. And it was great because it was already done, like working well, responsive design. And then I click all these little help to say, okay, what is this thing doing, right? So anywho, but it was a great foundation. It was a great foundation because what I liked about this is that and I'm going to use like a SOA type of term, it decoupled EBS and Apex. So they talk together, but in a very loose way. And what I liked about it is that it's that token that it was generating. So you were generating a token so that EBS or Apex knows which session that was. And what was really fun about this is that everything was done either with an Apex application or tables and some PLSQL, of course. So I thought for DBAs who were always saying, I don't like that stuff, they feel comfortable, and and I felt comfortable too, right? It was not like some Java server somewhere that was running the show.
So look, this app is probably 10 years old, maybe older. It's old, and it just upgraded. You're running that in the cloud environment, right?
So now I'm running it on an OCI instance. So and really it can run anywhere. So here's the new version of it.
I'm going to jump in right there. So the reason it's so decoupled from EBS is because it was actually written for 3 different clients at the same time. One client wanted to do single sign-on to Apex from EBS. One client wanted to do single sign-on from SharePoint. The third wanted to do single sign-on from Apex to Apex between databases. So the app was actually, the single sign-on methodology had those 3 things: EBS, SharePoint, and Apex to Apex, but on different databases. So it had to be decoupled from EBS.
And that worked really well because I've augmented the original package if you want, and the more feature. But at the end of the day, see, we all we need is what was provided.
Same page, right?
Yeah, same page. And I added a bunch of things into the code, which I'm gonna not provide today because it's just boring stuff. But I just added more features so that you can see the activities going on. That's why I put the dashboard. So because people are interested. Okay, who's using these applications now that we have developed them? What's the performance, response time, and so on and so forth. So that provides like a perfect way to show that information that you have available. It's not in EBS, obviously, and just with an Apex application, you can do that. But I have to say one thing, that where we work more, so that I see it like in 2 phases, right? So let me show you a little something here. I have a little animation here. I'm going to switch that here like this, so you see the full screen of this little demo here, right?
Yeah.
So here's your part in action. So when we click on that function, and behind the function, the EBS function is a GSP. So the GSP, is querying the repository or the SSO list. So as a developer, when I create a new application, as you know, Anton, you say, well, this application can be accessed from this partner. In this case, this is EBS. And if it's in the list, then it constructs this URL to redirect to. And really what I like is we're talking about that token. So it's a one-time use, right? URL. So I'm no security guru, but for somebody that would sniff the network and try to figure out where to go, to me, that would be really hard, because this URL is only available or valid for a few seconds, only one time. So
that's exactly it.
Right. So, and what I liked about it is all the different level of validation, security. So this is the first one. The second one being this redirect guide. So the redirect guide, if you remember, passing this key will validate again that, was the URL used, the timeout exceeded, and so on and so forth. And what we added on top of that is there a valid EBS session? So if it's not existing, if you even try to fake something, then it will fail. And then finally it goes to this third level, which is the target application, and makes a third validation right here, right? So if you remember, there was this application process that checks again the validity of the URL and the timeout and so on and so forth, and then finally redirect to the target page. So I thought that was fabulous to have these multiple levels as opposed to just a direct link.
Gentlemen, we have another question that came in, and thank you. I'll thank the participant for putting his question inside the question and answer section. Session control has a main issue with Apex extension to EBS. Is there a setting or control to prevent commit if user let the session expire? By default, each PL/SQL call is committed.
So if I understand that right, you're talking about a session on the EBS side or on the Apex side, which for me is, at the end of the day will be the same. Because the second part of this integration is to recreate the EBS context. So we will read the profile option for timeouts and apply it to Apex. That being said, if you try to submit a page and you exceeded the timeout, you'll kick back to the EBS page for a relogin or enter your password again. So there won't be any commits. If I understood that right, I don't know if you read that question differently, Anton?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I was thinking it might mean that if you're in an Apex application and you're calling an EBS API, every call to that API, within an Apex submit, all of the PL SQL gets committed. And that is true. If you want to make sure that you bundle up your page submits into a single transaction. You can't navigate multiple Apex pages calling EBS APIs along the way and then commit at the end. That doesn't work. You need to have some sort of methodology that you call all of those EBS APIs and then commit in a single transaction. And there are certainly ways to do that. You can write things to Apex session state or Apex collections, and then when you've decided that you want to finally submit it all, then you call the EBS APIs. I'm not sure which it was specifically getting at, but it is a little bit different when you're moving from, and this is true from forms, any forms application to an Apex application, that commits happen within a persistent database connection like forms or even OAF. You could have an open transaction across a long period of time, whereas Apex doesn't work that way.
And Anton, the participant mentions forms OAF by default rollback if not explicitly rolled back. And also he says forms even has a setting for that at forms top level.
Yes, and that's precisely what I'm getting at is that in Apex, you're committing with the end of each transaction, with each page submit is going to be a commit. There are ways to handle that though, and every Apex developer needs to learn those things because that's the reality of developing an Apex. It's stateless from a database connection standpoint. So you have to either make use of Apex session state or something like an Apex collection. You bundle up those transactions and make them, as a unified transaction in a final step. Sylvain, any more on that?
No, that's true. I mean, there's like anything else, there's techniques that you need to master in order to make it work on the system that you're working on. But in my experience in the last 5-6 years, all the projects that we have done we're able to make extension and application to work perfectly with EBS according to how we want to manipulate the data and exceptions.
Right, and I'll say there are trade-offs here. Certainly, I've used OAF, I've used forms, I've used ADF, and there are times when that feature is really nice, where you can put in a whole bunch of transactions and then roll them back. You can roll back to a specified point, all kinds of different things you can do there. On the other hand, you are keeping open a dedicated database connection for every user when you're doing that. And from a resource perspective, that's really challenging. You need a lot more resources to do that, database resources as well as middle tier resources. So you can, with 20 or 30 database connections, an Apex application can literally service 1,000 users. What you would call concurrent users. Whereas with a Forms application, 1,000 concurrent users requires 1,000 database connections. So
that's a lot of resources.
Yeah.
So
sorry, gentlemen. One participant says worth mentioning that the web is stateless, and this commit after each call is a challenge with any web technology.
Yeah, well, I will say it's so not with any. I don't really agree with that statement because there are web technologies that hold that out at the middle tier. The middle tier will hold that database connection as a connection. So you can do that with ADF, for example. You can actually hold that database connection open. But when you're doing that, you're maintaining that database connection at the middle tier, and your web browser to the middle tier is stateless. That's true, but it's really that connection to the database being open that allows you to commit transactionally, and you can do that with other web technologies, but they're very resource intensive both from the middle tier as well as the database tier.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm looking at the clock, and time is going fast, and I remember Fusion, so we need to talk about Fusion. And I like that conversation because I like the question that people have, because that's the main important thing to answer those questions. Yes.
I have, and perhaps this is just my own selfish question.
Yeah.
Is you guys have done a good job laying some of the background, explaining some of the history of how we got here. But for someone who is an EBS customer right now, what are some specific examples of where you might want to consider applying an Apex extension to EBS?
It's a very good question, and even though everybody is different, it's all like different category. There's the same categories but different needs, right? So and before I leave that screen and answer your question, Monty, because that's a very good question. At the end of the day, that's what's important here from an Apex point of view, is to recreate the EBS context, because as we were said earlier, or Anton said earlier, you can just do a report on some tables and that's fine. But when you start transacting, especially on multi-org module, you need to set that context appropriately. And having these profile options on the right-hand side will help you. So knowing that, one of the first example, and a very popular example that any organization would like to do is dashboards, right? So let me show you a dashboard here. And that's something that with Apex, it can be done with great success. So let's see here, like the supplier scorecard, one of my favorite. First of all, you have the operating unit that you're allowed to see. So that's the first thing that we see as the context that we have recreated. Of course, with Apex, you can have a nice UI to do a search or some sort of a navigation to enter parameters, as opposed to enter a concurrent program. So here I'm going back in time because I have a Vision instance that doesn't have fresh data. So that's one of the use cases that I see a lot, where you get data, you want to visualize that data, and maybe doing some drill down. So here I have for this use case, it's a supplier scorecard. So some metrics about a supplier that we want to provide a contract, maybe a yearly contract. So if I look at the this graph, I can drill down, and using a interactive report, then I can see the details of it. And of course, you know, because of interactive reports, for those who know, I can create my own view. Now that I have my results set, the user can create some group by, it can even view it as a little graph, even if it's limited. But that's a very, very popular use case.
I'd like to jump in with a couple as well.
Sorry?
I'd like to jump in with a couple of thoughts as well on
go ahead.
We use Apex. And I'll be quick with these, but the two scenarios that I see most common for folks that want to extend the EBS with EBS modules with Apex are anytime they're pushing this out to the public. If they have customers that they want to pay, to be able to pay their invoices online. I don't want anybody on the EBS team to take this wrong, but EBS has never presented a public-facing page that a customer liked. To make it look and be branded like you want it to look, to have all of the right validations and everything for your company, and put it out there public-facing for your customers. You know, look at the Oracle web store. It's an Apex application that writes back to the e-business suite.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That tells you something right there, right? So that's the big one. Anything that goes out to the public. The second one that I've often come across is very high usage things from your internal resources, things that they need to be able to get done very, very quickly. If they're on the phone and they need to be able to take an order, or a customer complaint, whatever it is, the things that they do a lot and they need to do rapidly, we end up rebuilding a screen that is tailored to that specific, very high usage, high traffic, repetitive task. So
yeah.
Those are the two things that I see.
Well, actually, to augment your comments, so this is on the screen right now, shop.oracle.com, and that's an Apex application, right? So it tells you how flexible that.
And where do you think all that data goes? It goes
EBS.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. Oh yeah, absolutely. So for customer facing, you know, of course now you need some CSS to make it nice and pretty like this, but the basis of it will still be your regular Apex application, right? Sure. So with your APIs that you're calling to, in this case, create a sales order and looking at maybe online inventory, available inventory, and so on and so forth. So totally flexible. And, you know, I don't know if this is ad hoc here. There's no, I'm trying to see, is there a way to see like a mobile phone? Oh, I can just do this here. Just squeeze it, right? Yeah. Yeah. So with Apex, that's what you have. It's all responsive. So your own application will work the same way. It's 45 minutes or 2:45 Montreal time. I really want to, because I have that fusion question that I want to answer. So let me go back to the one that I had queued up already, because I wanted to show you this. And it's pretty interesting. So here's the use case. We're partnering with a consulting firm in France called Talent, and so we work with them in developing an Apex application, and we're really just starting, but we're making good progress. So what we had done is an Apex application embedded into Fusion, and the Apex application or instance is living on the Autonomous database. So here's our Apex on Autonomous, and I'll spare the details, but guess what? It uses our good old folks for our good old application for single sign-on that you wrote, Anton, but tailored for Fusion. So what we have here, and I'll click quickly on this. So for those who know Fusion, this is the springboard, and I can create a group where I have a couple of applications. So here's a collaborate user application. So I presented this proof of concept at the last Collaborate conference, which happened to be online, unfortunately. So, so what we have here is we have an Apex application running inside the Fusion window. It's an iframe. So I, on purpose, put that little developer toolbar here so that everybody sees that it's totally Apex. So the use case here for that little demo is being able to maintain my user info. So everything is done through web services. And here that small use case is to show a few info. For example, the email and the preferred language. So I'm going to change my email to the right one, .ca, and I'm going to save. So the query was done through a web service because it's all available through Fusion now, a great catalog of services. And I was able to pose the information. So now if I go back.
It really is amazing, Sylvain, that Fusion Apps produces these RESTful services, and Apex is recently really focused on the ability to consume these RESTful services. It's almost like they're the same company.
Yeah, indeed. And they're all RESTful too, right? So it's not like it's
right.
It's like soap and
what do you know?
What do you know exactly? So I was able to transact on data that is on a SaaS application. And of course, this one example is Fusion, but you know, you can imagine it will work. It would work on any SaaS application as long as you have some APIs, so some web services to able to transact. And quickly, what I wanted to show is how you do that integration. So there are a couple of steps here. I'm going to go at a very high level, but the major steps are first to create what we call a partner, right? So even in our SSO, Anton, we were talking about partners. So here's, maybe they heard your calling and they call it partners. So now I create this partner called Cloud Apex, and all I have to do is put the URL of that autonomous database instance, right? Nothing too complicated there. So once I have that done, I can create what they call a page integration, which is essentially a link to the Apex application that I want to connect to. So here's my Apex application. So in the definition of that page or that application, I just simply say, I want to access this Cloud Apex instance. And then the rest is the actual call. So I could call an Apex application directly if I put the FP and then the number, but I chose to use our single sign-on to add security and more control. So I'm calling this single sign-on, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to put my partner name and my partner key, which are the two elements that I need to create a URL. So I have my partner name being Fusion and my partner key called users. And then to make it secure, I add this secure token. So a token will be passed on the Apex side. So the difference between EBS and Apex and Fusion and Apex, in the SSO that we had to create a token and Apex would use it. Here, we're just going to use a token that the Fusion instance is giving me, which, you know, in a way will confirm that I have a session, an active session. And the final step over here, if I remember where to go, you go to structure once you have created your page integration, and you tell it to, here I've created a little group for these applications. and you tell it to show either in the navigator or the springboard, and it's available. And of course, inside the Apex application, you need to get that token and use it in your REST call. But at the end of the day, it makes it, what it does is that it makes Apex available to extend Fusion apps, which is a totally SaaS application, just like it was, very similar to how we do it in EBS, but into this SaaS platform. So super high level description of what we can do with this, and we're going to keep working on that because we have so many ideas. But essentially, everything is cloud, and the beauty is that with the autonomous database cloud, you can create your own tables, right? So you can augment the data.
Sylvain, would you guys be willing to come back at some point in the future and discuss a little bit more about the Fusion integration? I think this is hotter than hot right now.
There would be so many things to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What do you think, Anton?
Yeah,
Well,
I will say the Fusion integration, it's almost easier, because as long as the REST API exists.
We're getting a lot of, we're getting
Oh, Michelle, we're losing you.
Yeah, Michelle, you're
Robot Michelle.
abort, Michelle. Abort.
I'll disappear then.
But I was just going to make the point that as long as Fusion has published the REST service, I think it's actually easier. The connection is straightforward. You can pass contextual information across as well. The challenge, of course, is Fusion is a little bit in its infancy, so there will be things that you want to be able to do that aren't ready yet, but they keep coming out with more APIs.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's.
And I'm going to go one step further, because this is our vision for the long run. Oracle provides very good cloud services, and one of them is Oracle Integration Cloud, Integration Cloud. There we go. And what I envision is that in the very near future, organization will move to the cloud. That's kind of a fact. There's nothing new under the sun here. But they're going to use probably the best of breed for certain function business processes. So they're going to have a Salesforce, they're going to have a Workday, they're going to have whatever. And then they're going to want these things to communicate. And I don't believe gaps will go away. So you're going to need some sort of a glue to make all these things talk and fill the white space. And I think Apex with Integration Cloud and the Autonomous database is a perfect fit, because now with Integration Cloud having all these adapters, being able to use and consume these integration, then you can start building a data process from multiple sources and have Apex being the center of it. And even hybrid, like even on-premise. Mm-hmm. So very, very lots to talk about, very, very promising. And I'm so excited to be able to spend some time in developing this and also to share it with the community.
Well, it's a date then. We'd love to have you guys back and discuss things in greater detail. Thank you both, Sylvain and Anton, for sharing your experiences with us today. Michelle, I'm not sure if your audio is lined out, but every week on the Insum Insider, I learned a few things. It's certainly the case today.
Yeah. Is this any better?
It is.
A little bit better.
It is a little bit? Okay. Now, I just wanted to mention there were a lot of comments, a few questions that we actually didn't get to. So we'll make sure to post them in the forum. And I invite Sylvain and Anton, please, to come back there, because I think there's a lot that people want to continue the conversation. It looks like we'll be doing another session on EBS because people are asking for it. So I want to thank you very much. It was a great session. Anton, you'll be you'll want to make sure to check the chat because you got a lot of ribbing after Sylvain's God comment. So it's definitely going to be worth your time.
Did I say that? Really?
You,
I'll have to watch the recording.
There was a lot of ribbing. And Sylvain, there's an inside joke for you that you want to look at as well. So thank you, audience, for your participation today. It's a great session. I've had a few giggles despite my robot internet. It's been great.
I had a tough time getting my head through the door.
Well, join us next Tuesday when Insum's own Vincent Bourneau and the Hudson Hornet, Hayden Hudson, will discuss repos and deployments, and it's going to be done in French. Next Thursday, bring your sanitizer because we're going to be getting dirty with the Oracle Cloud, and that's where Adrian Ping and Luc Demanche. We're going to show you how to get the most out of the always free autonomous database. If you've been looking at the Oracle Cloud, free is a very good price. The downbeat will remain at 2 o'clock Eastern time. You're not going to want to miss that. Michelle, you mentioned if someone still has questions, or we'll post the questions that didn't get addressed onto the forum. We'll put the link, if you would, Mark, put the link in the chat so people have a way to navigate over to the forum. Both Sylvain and Anton will be hanging around there and answering your questions. Mark, we need to get everybody back to work. So if you'll cue the music, we'll dance on out of here, and we'll do it all again next week on the Insum Insider.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Everyone.
You've been listening to the Insum Insider.